Welcome to The Whole Pineapple. I'm Ruby Boris.
And I'm Ann Judge. The Whole Pineapple is a podcast about wellness focused around fertility. We'll talk with experts on a wide range of topics, including nutrition, stress relief, sleep, mental health, etc.
And we'll dig into the issues that can cause fertility challenges, like PCOS, or early menopause, or cancer treatment.
So if you're curious about your fertility, whether you're ready to start a family,
or you're preserving your options for the future, let's dig in. Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to Ruby's Nutrition Nerd Out.
Yeah, it's another one of those. If you're listening before lunch, you'll end up being hungry by the end. So.
Yes, that's right. It's a Ruby-centric episode. And before we jump into my happy place, talking about nutrition, there are some special days and weeks I wanted to bring up. So first is World Adoption Day is November 9th. Next week is National Kindness Week. So spread some kindness. Yeah. I mean, really all the time, but especially next week. And then definitely want to share some kindness with your favorite nurse practitioner because it is Nurse Practitioner Week.
Ooh, Nurse Practitioner Week.
November 13th through the 19th. So happy Nurse Practitioner Week, Ann.
Thank you. Happy to you. I always make sure my husband knows that I still get to celebrate Nurses Week too, because nurses are nurse practitioners. So it can be a whole big celebration. So
yes, of course. It's kind of like my birthday. I get a birthday week, not a birthday. So
and then he mentions how there's no like computer scientist day or week. And again, every week is computer scientist week. You're always getting.
You just have to make one.
Program one. It's fine.
Yes. Well, Anne, what I love as much as a nurse practitioner?
Zucchini.
Actually,
Ruby was holding up a giant zucchini that someone brought in today. So
kind of, yes. Well, fiber.
Fiber.
And do you know why I love fiber?
Why, Ruby?
Gut health.
Gut health. Just everybody loves a good poop. I mean, it's really normal.
It's true. Yay, that's what we're talking about today. But and does gut health have anything to do with fertility?
That's what I'm interested to learn about today, because it's definitely not something that we think about. And especially for you and I mean, I've worked in this field for a really long time, and it's certainly something that I never heard of in the beginning. And now there's definitely a lot of buzz around the microbiome and gut health. And so I'm definitely interested to hear what is new in that area, because it's a topic a lot of our listeners are probably also curious about.
What's the estrobolome, the vaginal microbiome, all that good stuff? Yeah. I am totally stoked to talk to today's guest. Let's just jump into it. We are talking with Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, affectionately known as Dr. B. Dr. B is a board-certified gastroenterologist. He graduated from med school at Georgetown School of Medicine and was chief medical resident at Northwestern Memorial Hospital and chief gastroenterology fellow at the University of North Carolina Hospitals. He also holds a Master's of Science in Clinical Investigation from Northwestern University and a certificate in nutrition from Cornell University. Ever heard of it? It just reminds me of The Office every time. So, Office reference. Sorry. Dr. B has won multiple awards and distinctions for his work as a clinician and researcher. His goal as a gut health doc is to be a trusted research-based source helping people to create positive change in their lives. At the core of his philosophy is what he calls lifestyle medicine.
That's your jam.
That's my jam. Uses food, exercise, and other lifestyle factors to optimize gut health and get you back into control of your overall health. When he's not working as a full-time gastroenterologist, Dr. B is writing and is now a twice New York Times bestselling author. First was Fiber Fueled, which I loved. And as of May 2022, the Fiber Fueled Cookbook, which I pre-ordered at my local indie bookstore, and you should too. He doesn't shy away from a good alliteration or food pun, which I am all about. And you can find more about Dr. B's approach, his books, and his 2023 masterclass on his website, theplantfedgut.com, or social at theguthealthmd. Welcome.
And I also love zucchini and nutrient practitioners.
Yay!
So how about that for the win?
That is sold. Favorite guest ever.
That's like the weirdest Sound of Music, my favorite things verse ever. Nutrition, nurse practitioners, and zucchinis. You had to find something else to rhyme it out.
And fiber. Well, this is what you get from the guy who wrote an entire book about fiber. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Well, that's a great place to start. Like, what brought you into this work? What's your origin story?
The origin story is that this was not a plan. This just kind of happened. And it's bizarre to me, like even to me, that this is where I am. Hey guys, how are y'all?
Howdy.
But I think that if you're going to like really say, where did this start? Something unexpected. I think it starts when something happens in your own life, and then you apply that to your professional life. So if we were to go back 10 years ago, I was in my early 30s and I was suffering with a health crisis. I was 50 pounds overweight, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, super anxious, depressed. Honestly, I was kind of in this place where, I'm not exaggerating, there were a lot of days where I just kind of turned the lights off and I rolled up on the couch under a blanket, and that's where I wanted to be, and I just wanted to be left alone. I knew I wasn't in a good place. I knew that things needed to change for me. The bizarre thing about that is that I was at a point in my life where I was already board certified as an internal medicine doctor.
So you knew at an intellectual level that you weren't doing your best.
Honestly, no. I guess, yes, in the sense that I knew that I wasn't feeling well. I knew that I had these health issues. I wanted them to go away, but I didn't really know how to do that, which is very strange because it's like I am a person in need of medical care. And here I am. I'm actually the, sort of award-winning internal medicine doctor. I'm supposed to be the person who fixes this. So I tried exercising my way out of this mess, and it didn't work.
I feel like that's a place where a lot of people start.
It's a guy thing, I think, a little bit.
I don't know. As a woman in her 40s that does a lot of marathon and endurance events, I think it's also like, it's like I would just go out there and burn more calories, run more miles.
Yeah,
like, that's
I was
how
just
I'm
going to say,
fix everything.
You know how I love my heavy weights, Anne.
Yeah.
Keep your hands off my food. You know what I mean? Like I'm not letting you touch my food. I'm going to eat what I want to eat, but I will work out, and I will work out hard enough to overcome whatever limitations I have in terms of my diet. And like I went straight sort of like, type A personality on this. Like I was going so hard, 30 to 45 minutes of strength training a day. Then afterwards, either a 5 or 10K on the treadmill, or summertime in North Carolina, jump into the pool, 50 to 100 laps in the pool. I got stronger. I got faster. I could swim. I could not lose weight. I still felt like crap. And everything changed for me on so many levels. When I went on a first date with this person, fast forward 10 years, this is my wife. We just had our third child 3 months ago.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you. The baby is amazing. I think it's just the luck of the draw, to be completely honest with you, having the experience of having 3 kids at this point. I don't think it's us. I think it's them.
Right. Yeah. It's day and night between my 2 kids too. Like my first was the worst sleeper on the planet, and my second one, no problem. So.
Our first was great, and we got very confident.
Oh no.
Of like broadcasting. Like, let me tell you how to fix your problems.
That's why they call that a gateway baby.
Yeah.
You have one that tricks you into thinking that you're really good at this.
Well, Anne, I think you gave me the sleep book because I think you came in my office and I was like, I'm dying. Help me.
I did. I love a good book with a plan. So that's why we have a good book with a plan today, too.
Yes, we do.
I mean, there definitely are some tricks. There are some things that you can do, but yeah, we got overconfident, and we nature came down on us with our second one and set the score straight. But anyway, I'm on this date. I'm at the University of North Carolina, so we're just outside of Chapel Hill, and it's like a pork place, right? This is where you go for pork food. I'm getting the pork chop, and this person that I'm on the date with, she did something quite bizarre to me. She ordered like a whole bunch of sides, and she said to the waiter, "Can you just put it on one plate?" It was like, black-eyed peas and okra and collard greens, and I'm just like, who are you?
Is she bringing the platter of ribs out separately? Like, what is she doing here with her order?
Exactly.
Is this a starter?
What is going on right now? And what is this parallel universe that I find myself in? So this is late 2012, early 2013, and I don't know anyone who's vegan, let alone vegetarian. But here's what I did see, though. With my own eyes, I witnessed this person who, she loved her food. She felt full. She raved about the quality of the dish. She looked amazing. Her health appeared to be effortless for her. And here I am suffering, and I feel like crap, and I just want to feel better. And maybe, just maybe, the food that I was raised on, was celebrated by my family, and that frankly I love, is actually holding me back and is the source of my problems? She never once, even fast forward to today, never once became evangelical on me. But the backstory of my wife, real quick, is that when she was 5 years old, she learned how the cows get taken out. And that was enough to motivate her to actually convert her parents, and they stopped eating meat.
Oh, good for her.
So, as a 5-year-old.
That's hard.
Wow. It didn't work in The Simpsons. Lisa Simpson was not able to convince the others.
The Simpsons are 90s. We got to update that.
I'm from Montana, and my grandparents had a ranch, so I had to go to the branding and all of those things, and I had a real problem with it, but it's to this day still working on it.
Yeah.
Family wise anyway.
So she never really told me I should do something or I had to do something. She just lived her life.
Which is probably the best way to get you interested in it, right? Because if from the beginning she'd been saying like, oh, you really need to do this, you're probably naturally going to push back and kind of have a counter argument.
Yeah, this is a big part of what I bring into my platform, to be totally honest with you, completely regardless of where I'm at in my life. It's the understanding that people are at their own place and I need to go and meet them where they are and talk to them in a way that's respectful of where they are, understanding, and also just presenting the facts and the science so that they can make a choice for themselves. Adults get to choose what they want. That's up to them.
Well, even in the sleep book that I sent Ruby, that's what I liked about it. Is it wasn't a book saying, here's the method to fix. It was a book saying like, hey, here are the different studies that tell you like the pros, cons of different approaches, like what's going to work for your family. And I feel like that is the best way to give people the information that's out there. And one of the things that I love about your book is you're pretty clear about what information is on one side versus what information is on the other, but you're still not like, you know, as you said, trying to be evangelical about it, trying to make people feel bad for past beliefs and behaviors. You really want to just let people look at what's out there and kind of come to a conclusion on their own.
And there's also many forms of a healthful diet. I don't believe that the only healthy diet is a vegan diet. I think that there's a lot of beautiful things there in terms of, you know, love for animals or concern about the environment. Like those are great things. But I'm a doctor. And if I'm going to speak as a doctor, I need to keep it straight. Like, what are the facts? What does the science say? That's something that I do, like, regardless of what I eat in my personal life. That's not what I'm trying to make you. I'm trying to instead give you the facts and then let you make the choice of what you want to make yourself. So the short of it is that it made me curious. And one day I was planning to drive to Hardee's they had this deal.
I'm from the Midwest. I'm like, oh, Hardee's. I remember Hardee's and high school and going there and getting fries. Yeah.
Well, you can feed an entire family for $5. It's great.
Yeah.
Except, like, I was the only one eating that $5 worth of food. So I was just like, you know what? Let me try something different. And I needed it to be simple. I'm not a French trained chef. I'm not trying to be. And I was like a single male in my early 30s. So you know what's simple is a blender. You press a button and it buzzes stuff. And then you get a smoothie.
Which is fun. You get to watch it all go together. So.
It's so easy. You just throw stuff in there. So that's what I did. I went home. I threw stuff in there. I pressed the button. A like 36-ounce smoothie came out of it. I drank it. It was like about 3 large glasses worth. And I instantly felt like something that had been missing in my life showed up. I felt energized. I felt light. I didn't need to like make groaning noises on the couch for an hour afterwards. I went to the gym and I smashed an amazing workout. And I felt so good in that moment. Like this was not a commitment to anything. This was not some sort of moment where I'm like, I am this. This was quite simply, I have been sick. I have been miserable. And I feel really good right now. And I want to keep feeling that way. So let me go back to the well and do this again another time and see if it works. That's what I did. And I started to snowball slowly. This was not a radical transformation. This was me making choices and then adding new choices. Like, you know, instead of soda, why not kombucha or water or lemon water? Instead of coffee with the heaviest dairy cream possible plus like 3 Splendas, why not just black? And started making these choices. And next thing you know, this like weight that I had been, you know, working so hard to try to get off of my body, it's just melting. And my skin is clearing up and my hair is growing thicker. And also I feel like myself again. And this person presents differently now with a lot more confidence. I think the reason why this is such an important sort of moment in my life to discuss is because I had the training, I had the education, you know, I have the experience as a doctor in the hospital taking care of sick people. But what was missing was that I needed to be the one who was sick, and I needed to discover that solution. And when I discovered that solution, even though it was something that was frankly outside of my training, despite this amazing education at Georgetown and Northwestern and the University of North Carolina, once I discovered that, I feel that as a person who passionately cares about what I do and these people that I take care of, I have no choice. There is no turning back. If it can work for me, there is no denying this to my patients. It has to be a part of what I do. And so it became a little bit of an obsession, to be totally honest, where I would work during the day. And most people, like when you're a doctor, you work so hard, you just want to chill when you get home. And I would work during the day and I would go home and I would keep reading and study nutrition and learn about it and bring it into my clinic. And I was imperfect, but my patients were willing to meet me and learn with me. And we worked on it together, and things started to really change as I started to make these dietary changes with my patients or lifestyle changes, where I started to see they were having their own version of a transformation.
And what was the reaction to the other providers in your practice at this time? Like, were they noticing you were doing these things? Were they kind of making fun of you? Were they curious? Tell me kind of what that reaction was.
Well, obviously I wasn't in the room in moments there, right?
So in the break room, they'd be like, "You hear what he's telling his patients? Oh my God.
He's coming."
Speculate, right? Not to be paranoid or anything. But, no, look, I think that what they saw was they saw a very motivated young man who wanted to be the best doctor possible, and that this was something that I believed in. No one in that moment, we're talking about, like, I finished my training in 2014, and this is something that I'm now actively involved in because my body and my life has been transformed. And by the way, now I'm also married to my wife and we have a child. I think from their perspective, I was just this motivated guy who really, really, really wanted to sort of make my mark in the community. No vision to anything bigger than that.
Fast forward, here you are.
Well, yeah. So like basically short of it is that these things that were happening in my clinic were so profound that I was like, people need to hear this. This is not appropriate for me to be one-on-one in a community, and they're the only ones that get this. So in 2016, I started my social media. It did not take off. It was a very slow thing. No one really cared for a very long time.
It's a harsh place.
Yeah, and it is what it is, but no one really cared for a very long time. Yet I still continued to do it. I was not making money. If anything, I was losing money by doing it, and certainly losing a lot of time. Then in 2018, things changed. And I had a podcast that I did with Simon Hill from The Proof, formerly known as Plant Proof, and it went viral. And it was this moment where he and I shared it together. His podcast, which is now huge, it was young. And it kind of put that show, episode 17, put his podcast, I think, on the map. And in no way am I taking credit. Simon is brilliant and great at what he does. But what I am saying is that now he's one of my best friends, which is amazing because the guy was in Sydney, Australia. This is the power of the internet. This is the beauty of it.
Yeah.
I can hate it so much, but then you have something like this that happens that changes your life. And it led to a book deal. I got my book deal in the fall of 2018 after that podcast went viral. And I wrote this book, Fiber Fueled, my first book, at 5 a.m. at Starbucks because I was working full time as a gastroenterologist. Did that in 2019. And then it came out in May of 2020.
Nothing else was going on there. It was fine. So.
What happened then?
Yeah. It was kind of a weird time because I have a book coming out, but Rich Roll just canceled on me because I can't, like, he can't have me to LA with what's going on. And my practice has been shut down. We have, like, as a partner in a medical practice, you don't take a paycheck if there's not money coming in. You pay your employees, but there's nothing for you. So it was this weird moment, like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen here? Anyway, it's exciting. And I still can't fully explain it other than to say that, look, the book came out, Fiber Fueled, in May of 2020. It was a New York Times bestseller. That was way beyond my expectation. It has now sold well north of 200,000 copies. That's way beyond my expectation. And it led to me writing my second book. We don't need the story to drag on any longer. This is a long story, but
that's what the podcast is. It's just your story, and we don't need to get into the science.
No, we're hooked. We're just listening, man.
And thank you for your time. I hope everyone has a nice day. Nothing to learn here other than you can buy my book if you want to. So anyway, my second book, the Fiber Fields Cookbook, it's a cookbook. It's got 125 recipes. It's got full color photography. It's gorgeous.
If you like a cookbook with pictures, which like I only use cookbooks with pictures because I don't know, visual, I don't know. It's fantastic. It's so pretty.
It's like an Us Weekly for health.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just,
you don't need to read the text. Just flip through it.
That's just, and you can just like, oh, that looks good. You just grab it.
That's the point. Flip through, find what looks good, and fold the page. Anyway, I created this book. It's a bit of a hybrid book because one of the things is, okay, so after Fiberfield was so successful, I'm now like, okay, I have a platform, and this platform has the capacity to do something. You can choose what you want it to be. And what I choose is, let me focus on creating value and filling the gaps where solutions don't currently exist. And all the other stuff is going to take care of itself. And so with the second book, my goal was, okay, like there are a bazillion people out there suffering with food intolerances. They message me on Instagram and I've seen them clinically. And the solutions that exist, like they're not offered solutions. The conventional healthcare doesn't know what to do. And then many of the options that they're provided are actually not evidence-based. So let me be the one to use this cookbook, which features recipes, to create protocols and an entire strategy that actually is evidence-based, so that if you are the person suffering with these issues, we can fix this and I can show you how. But if you're not having these issues, I got delicious food. You want to eat? You want to hang out with me? Let's eat some delicious food and let's have a good time. So that's kind of what the cookbook became. And it came out this past May, and it spent 3 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and sold like 60,000 copies in the first month. And it was crazy.
Awesome.
It's hard to think what to ask now. Now we know your whole story.
Mic drop, I'm out.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, let's actually go to the first chapter of Fiber Fueled, which was titled "The Engine That Drives Human Health Isn't Even Human." What does that mean?
Ruby, are we going chapter by chapter here?
We're going to be here a while.
Yeah, we booked you for 8 hours today. I hope you've canceled clinic because we've got some stuff. So
this is like reminding me of high school when I used to do the dance marathon. It's like such a great idea until it's like 3 a.m. and you want to die.
No, I promise we won't go chapter to chapter.
But I want to dwell on the first one because, full disclosure, the first one is the chapter that I read. Ruby sent me the book like months ago, and then earlier this week I was like, oh my God, that interview is tomorrow. So last night I was up and I was like, oh wait, the end is the guide. So I can look at the guide later, but I did read the first chapter and I found it fascinating. And I'm like, Ruby will cover all the other questions. So
you're like my 5-year-old son who voluntarily offers when he did something wrong. It's like, I didn't even know that you did this. And he's just like, he feels so guilty. He has to say it.
I have to be honest. Otherwise we won't become best friends. That's how we're going to become podcast best friends again.
Okay, cool.
This is usually me. That's why I'm laughing.
That's why it's funny. But I have my Post-it note and I have all these notes and they're like page 5, page 11, page 13. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't have this many notes just from chapter 1 or we won't have anything to talk about.
I wrote the book in 2019. I don't remember what's on page 5, but
okay. Let's go paragraph by paragraph.
Yeah. All right. So the engine that drives human health isn't even human. This is like, the statement is so true. And it's wild because we had no idea. We did not see this coming. I didn't see this coming. We think of ourselves as these autonomous, powerful creatures. We are the masters of our domain. We dominate this planet. That's not really true either. But the thing about it is we're not alone. We are appropriately termed a superorganism because we actually are covered on all external surfaces with microbes. Our skin, our mouth, inside our nose, woman's vagina. Believe it or not, our eyeball has a microbiome. These invisible microorganisms that are frankly as alive as you and I are. The place where they're most concentrated is inside your gut, specifically your colon. And in that spot, if you were to zoom in, I'm talking about the large intestine. If you were to zoom in on this place, with the naked eye, you can't see anything. But if we had a microscope, you would see that there is an entire world living inside of you right now. It's an ecosystem, and it's filled with life, many different types of bacteria and fungi, and potentially these things called archaea, which have been on the planet for 4 billion years, and viruses, possibly even parasites. And it's wild. And they're there not just like hanging out, and they're not there to like just take from us. They're there because we evolved together and we have a relationship with them that is so critically important that we actually need them in order to be healthy humans. Without them, we are not. And they have integrated themselves into things that considered to be quite critically important for human health. So they're completely intertwined and a part of our digestion, our immune system, our metabolism, our hormones, which you guys may have heard of this term hormones before.
Just once or twice.
Well, if you're talking about an evolutionary perspective, I mean, reproduction is such a driver of evolution. So to think about how this might impact reproduction, I mean, it's something that we haven't considered, but of course we should. You know, it's such a, that was one of my favorite things actually, was your evolutionary approach and how we don't necessarily think about it at that microscopic level. And also like The Simpsons, there's that Treehouse of Horror episode where they have the tooth that creates this whole world underneath. And it's like all these things that it's creepy to think we're teaming with bacteria, but it's also just so cool to realize that they're coexisting and in some ways really beneficial for us.
They're not just there. I mean, basically all life on this planet, if it's alive, it either has a microbiome or it is a part of something else's microbiome. And you can make an argument that it's kind of like just what is the level at which we're either zooming in or zooming out, right? We could be zooming in and seeing these single cellular microorganisms that do a lot of things better than we do as humans. That's why we've outsourced so much of our health to them, because we evolved with them and they did it better than us. So let's just let them do it, right? Or you could zoom out and you see us humans, right? Or you see the neighborhood in which we live, and then you zoom out further and you just see this big picture, which is this planet. And I can't see the people down there, but I know they're there. I sometimes feel like it's, not to be metaphysical, but it's just sort of like there's these patterns that exist everywhere. And it's just a question of, are we zooming in or zooming out?
If we have all of these things inside of us, I imagine they can either work well with us or work not so well with us. There's a term called dysbiosis. Tell us a little bit about that.
So they want to work well with us, but if we neglect them and we don't care for them, then we can sort of create a disturbance in the force. Dysbiosis is a quite broad term. It's not being very specific, but what it's generally referring to is that there's a loss of balance or harmony within the microbiome. Everything is supposed to be there in balance. And that includes bad guys. Like there's bad guy microbes that are there, and they're not really that big of a problem as long as you have enough good guys to outweigh them. But when there's dysbiosis, what we typically see is that there's a loss of diversity, meaning that there are less species of microbes. This, by the way, is a pattern that becomes very important when we talk about ecosystems of any size. So it could be your microbiome that we're talking about. It could also be that we're talking about the Great Barrier Reef or the Amazon rainforest. When there's a loss of diversity within an ecosystem, the ecosystem becomes fragile and less stable.
And that includes you need predators. You need that balance. You can't have only one type of anything. So
absolutely. I am absolutely terrified of snakes. When I was a kid, I was fishing with my dad. I think I was 3, maybe 4. And a water snake in upstate New York, non-poisonous, but they are aggressive. It chased me and it gave me nightmares my entire childhood. I would wake up thinking there were snakes in my bed with me. So I'm quite terrified of snakes, but the problem is that there's actually tremendous value to snakes. There's a reason why they're there. There's certain things that they do, whether we're talking about my backyard or we're talking about the Amazon rainforest. There's things that they do that they take care of that the other animals simply are not designed to do. And if we take the snakes out of the ecosystem, then we're going to be overrun with, rodents and other things. And then that creates a new problem. So we want harmony and balance. When we lose diversity, it's problematic. This is what we see in dysbiosis in humans. But the other thing that you see is a loss of the good guy bacteria. There's not as many of them. And there's a surge in sort of the inflammatory bacteria that are problematic. And when this takes place, it starts to affect the lining of the intestine. The lining of the intestine, many people have heard of the expression leaky gut. So let me explain what leaky gut is, because it's an appropriate description of what happens. When you have dysbiosis, there is this single layer of cells called the epithelial layer. It's meant to be like the castle wall. And it has these proteins that hold the cells together. It's like creating a fence that's tight, a wall that's tight. And when there's damage to the gut, it damages those proteins. And now you're basically popping holes into the wall. And now your barrier is disrupted, and it's easy for things like toxins or things that aren't supposed to get into the bloodstream. They start sneaking into the bloodstream, and there are negative effects that come from this. So ultimately what we want is a diverse microbiome with a lot of good guys and a couple bad ones, and they maintain a healthy gut barrier that doesn't have this leakage of materials into the bloodstream.
I think the sense of scale is something that I hadn't thought about before reading your book. On page 11, you mentioned that 60% of your poop is bacteria. And I was like, really? 60%? Like I think when we talk about it intellectually, you picture microscopic and you think, oh, it's this small part of me, but it's actually like a large portion of what's happening inside.
Yeah, I could talk about poop all day. So, when you invite me on the show for 24 hours, we're going to spend at least 6 talking about poop. So, yeah, so no, it's quite interesting. So let me share an experiment that people can do at home. This is like an N of 1 study.
Oh my gosh, is it a poop experiment? Because this is so exciting.
Yeah. Oh, Anne is, you're hooked.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. This is what you do. All right. So everyone needs to do this, including Anne. All right. Not literally right now. Like,
okay. I mean, click my camera off. No problem. Yeah.
So Anne, how's it going over there? All right. So Anne, I see you sipping on a drink right now. So what if we took that beverage, or it could be a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, anything of that variety, and we added a scoop of soluble fiber to it. All right. Now, a couple examples of soluble fiber. You could get wheat dextrin, which is benefiber. That's over the counter. You could get acacia fiber, which you'll probably find at Whole Foods. You could order partially hydrolyzed guar gum. What's unique about this soluble fiber is that it will dissolve completely in this beverage. So like you won't see it. You won't be able to detect it or know that it's there. There's no roughage. There's no grit. And you drink this beverage, and I can promise you, the next major bowel movement that you have, you will notice a difference. And the reason why you're going to notice this difference is not because of roughage. There is no roughage in your cup. Instead, what you're going to discover is that you have a larger bowel movement because you just fed your microbiome. Your poop is 60% made up of microbes. So if you feed your microbiome, they grow stronger and you create new microbes. And creating new microbes leads to bigger, healthier, more satisfying bowel movements. And you can thank me later.
It's like my own little internal sea monkey experiment to see what happens.
Totally. I think it's pretty cool.
I was reading the book last night and I was telling my husband how I totally want to try the fiber plan, but we're getting ready to go on a cruise with my sister-in-law. So it's going to be 5 of us in a little tiny 1 bathroom. I was like, maybe I'll wait till after the cruise though. Maybe I'm not going to change my bowel movements until I'm no longer using a shared toilet with a lot of other people.
I say go for it. Who cares?
It'll be an amazing poop at sea. Yeah. That sounds exciting.
You'll be impressed.
So here we get lots of thank you cards because we help people, have babies. Do you get thank you cards for thank you for my wonderful bowel movements?
Sometimes I do. Yeah, sometimes I do. People that have a sense of humor about it, and I think that they can appreciate that I get a good chuckle out of it. So I'm cool with it. But the thing that propels you when you write a book, because there's a lot of stuff that you have to do and go through, and there's a lot of parts of it that aren't necessarily fun. But the reason that you do it is you start getting these messages from people that are like, you changed my life. And as a doctor, you're like, this is the reason why I went to medical school.
For sure.
We don't talk enough really about the value of a healthy functioning GI tract. We were talking about kids earlier. I mean, that's fascinating to me when you have a little kid and you see how they look when they're really gassy and then when they're tired and then they have a really great poop, and you've never seen a kid smile that big, right? They're just like, and you could tell they just feel like a million times better and everything is good. So it's, something that's such a part of our daily life that we really don't talk about hardly at all. So.
And why are we pretending that we don't feel that way as adults?
Yeah. We read the Everybody Poops book to our kids, but then we just let it go.
Yeah. It is a hot topic in my house.
I sincerely believe that this should be one of the highlights of your day, is a good, high quality, very satisfying bowel movement. And you don't necessarily have to declare it publicly, but you
can get those little I voted stickers, get your little I pooped today sticker, and you just put it on. And
we need to have those next sticker rendition.
So obviously with the experiment, we would do that. But what about it general life? Where should we be getting our fiber?
Yeah, not that. You can. There is a place for fiber supplements. Don't get me wrong. But is it okay if I take it from the top on fiber for a quick moment?
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Okay. So, because I just feel compelled to kind of share this story, because here I am, this guy that gets super excited about fiber, and everyone's like, fiber is the most boring thing I've ever heard of. What are you doing?
Not to me. It is super sexy to me.
That's what I'm saying. Fiber is sexy. Look, sexy is feeling great and living a healthy life, right? That's sort of the essence. Fiber has been clearly shown in clinical research studies to reduce our risk of dying of heart disease, dying of cancer, having a stroke, having diabetes, having chronic kidney disease, having Alzheimer's disease. I just listed 6 of the top 10 causes of death in the United States. Yet 95% are not getting even the minimal recommended amount of fiber. And I think part of the reason why is this misconception that fiber is boring. So let me share the new science that is so exciting, because there's a new science that didn't exist 20 years ago that we're like, holy crap, that's how fiber works? That's insane. Fiber is something that exists in plants. They basically have a monopoly on it. The exception to this are mushrooms. Mushrooms technically are not plants, they're fungi, but I'm declaring them honorary plants because they have fiber and they're great. So all plants have fiber. You don't have to look hard. You don't have to eat specific things. Just eat plants. And fiber is a carbohydrate. So people who vilify carbs, you're besmirching fiber. That ain't right. Fiber is not digestible by the human digestive system. We actually lack the enzymes to do anything with fiber. But these microbes that live inside of us, they have those enzymes. So fiber will pass through the small intestine, which is 10 to 15 feet long. It'll pass through the small intestine and it will be exactly the way that it was when it entered into your stomach. And it will arrive into your colon. And there in your colon, that's where your microbiome is. And these microbes, I mean, they may have like one single cell that is like the entirety of this bacteria, and they could have hundreds of enzymes designed for breaking down fiber. And so they start going to work basically as teams, deconstructing the fiber. They consume it. And as I mentioned earlier, they grow stronger. And then here's where the magic happens. Fiber stops being fiber. Fiber is transformed into the most healing, most anti-inflammatory compound I have ever come across in my 20 years of studying medicine. And these are the short-chain fatty acids, butyrate, acetate, propionate. These short-chain fatty acids, they have incredible healing effects throughout the entire body. I mentioned earlier that the gut microbiome is connected to and really important to our digestion, our immune system, our metabolism, our hormones, our mood, our brain health, our energy levels. And if we wanted to take a deep dive, we could talk about how short-chain fatty acids are the reason why for all of those. And when I talk about these 6 causes of death that we can reduce our exposure, less risk of dying from heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, Alzheimer's disease, it's the short-chain fatty acids once again. And here we are, 95% of Americans are not getting even the minimal recommended amount of fiber. And here I am, and I'm saying, you guys, this is so simple. All we have to do is eat more plants, and you are going to change, radically transform your health. And this is the reason why, the microbiome. It enables and empowers healthy humans by basically transforming the fiber into short-chain fatty acids.
So now when I eat fiber, I'm going to picture this like party inside my colon, and like the food tray has just arrived and they're like, yay, time to fill up. And
I personally see them as the Rockettes, and they're doing a kick line.
That's awesome.
That or it's like an amazing dance party.
The fiber's here. I see a frat party. I see a lot of like bouncing up together and getting wild.
Frat parties are, I don't know. I think there's some inflammation.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there's some inflammation at frat parties.
They're kind of steaky, those frat parties. I don't know.
So yeah, how does inflammation play into all of this?
The inflammation comes from our immune system. So this is talking about the connection between the gut and these gut microbes and our immune system. And the way that that works is that I mentioned earlier, this epithelial layer, so the single layer of cells. On one side of the single layer of cells is your gut microbiome. And this is inside of your colon. And on the other side is where your immune system lives and sets up shop. So people ask questions like, where is your immune system? And the answer is your gut. 70% of your immune system actually lives inside the lining of your gut. And it actually makes a ton of sense because your gut is actually where you're interacting with the outside world. So skin is a barrier. Your gut is where this position of, frankly, vulnerability, where you have made the conscious choice to chew and swallow something because you trust it and you allow it to enter into your intestines. And in that process, it comes into contact not only with your gut microbes, but also it's going to come into contact with your immune system so that they can kind of keep track of, okay, like, is this okay? Is this a problem? Do I need to get rid of it? Do I need to attack it? And so inflammation is when we activate the immune system excessively. We evolved to have inflammation for good reason. If you went back to 99.99% of human history, which predates the world in which we live, what you would discover is that people were dying of starvation, dying of bodily injury, and dying of infection. Now, inflammation doesn't help to fix the starvation issue, but our gut microbes do. But inflammation does help in terms of if you hurt yourself, inflammation helps you to heal a wound. That's a necessary step. And if you have an infection, inflammation is basically your immune system reacting to that invasive microbe or virus and clearing it. We evolved to have inflammation for good reason when we need it. It shouldn't be something that we see as categorically bad. It's categorically bad in the modern context, which is that we disrupt our microbiome and we activate a confused immune system. And that activation of the immune system is what ultimately sort of has a burning fire inside of us, which is chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation stands behind these conditions that we're talking about, which are sort of our modern epidemics that weren't such a problem 100 years ago. Heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, Alzheimer's. These are inflammatory conditions, as most medical issues are these days. And guess what's the most anti-inflammatory thing out there?
And do you want to say it?
I'm like, plants? It's almost always the right answer.
And it's not to overhype it, and I'm not trying to make it sound like we don't need modern medicine, all we need is fiber. I'm not trying to say that. But what I am trying to say is that when we live in a society where the average, for example, the average woman gets about 15.5 grams of fiber, and the minimum recommended amount is 25 per day. And the average man is getting 18 grams of fiber, and the minimum recommended amount is 38. I view this as we're talking about our most pressing, most serious nutritional deficiency on a public health scale, and needs to be addressed if we want to have a healthy country, healthy people.
Yeah, those little bugs they're starving.
They're starving. And it's quite fascinating because we're not, but they are. That's because we need to deliver food that can actually get to them. And if it doesn't contain fiber or resistant starches or polyphenols, by the way, polyphenols, they're antioxidant compounds, meaning that they reduce inflammation, and they're responsible for many of the colors in the plants. So when you see that beautiful eat the rainbow thing, we're basically saying, polyphenols are good for you. And these three things, fiber, resistant starch, and polyphenols, these are the three main prebiotics. And prebiotic is a term that you will now find in your grocery store. It wasn't 5 years ago. Prebiotic basically means food for your gut microbiome. This is the food that feeds and empowers these microbes. And the reason why is because fiber, resistant starches, and even the vast majority of polyphenols, we don't have the ability to digest them. And so they actually can get down to the colon where your microbes are, and then they're the ones who actually activate it. So, as a quick example, resveratrol. You hear people hyping up resveratrol. They talk about red wine and it's got resveratrol. You hear David Sinclair talking about how resveratrol is for longevity. Resveratrol would have basically no value if you did not have a microbiome.
And we've talked in some of our prior episodes too about how a lot of people really aren't even eating enough. Like you can be, malnourished at any body size. That a lot of people, especially if they are struggling with what they feel is excess waste, their first thing is to restrict calories and try and eat less and eat less. You talk a lot in your book about how much more full you feel when you start actually eating a higher quantity and a higher quality of food, because a lot of us, we're not feeding our microbiomes properly, but we're also just not feeding ourselves because we're trying to fix the way we feel, and restricting just seems like the easiest way. If someone posts something online saying, well, you have to give up gluten, you have to give up this, it's, I think, a lot easier for a lot of us to just take things out than it is to think about adding things in.
I think diet culture is restrictive more than anything.
Yeah, and that bothers me. To me, doesn't make sense. And to be clear on the reason why restrictive dietary patterns don't make sense to me. So I mentioned earlier that a healthy microbiome is a diverse microbiome. And we have to understand that these microbes are unique as you and I are. They have their own sort of personalities, their own skill sets, and their own dietary preferences. They're picky eaters. They don't all want the same thing. And fiber is not just generically fiber. That would be like saying protein. The protein in a fish is different than the protein in a cow, is different than the protein in a bean. Same is true with fiber. Every plant has its own unique types of fiber, and each microbe has specific types of fiber that it likes. So when you eat a wide variety of different plants, you get a wide variety of different types of fiber that ultimately feed a wide variety of these microbes. This is more than just sort of my appealing narrative on how to eat for better gut health. This is actually scientifically validated. Going back to the American Gut Project 2017, where when they performed their analysis, this is a study where they took 11,000 people actually from across the globe, not just the United States, and they looked at their diet and lifestyle patterns and their gut, the health of their gut microbiome. And when they did their analysis, they found that there was one clear-cut number one predictor of a healthy gut above all else. This was the number one thing. The people who had the healthiest guts were the people who were eating at least 30 different plants per week.
It is challenging if you're not somebody that does that routinely.
Not to be super nerdy, but this number of 30, it's not a magic number. It has to do with the way that you have to conduct clinical research and set it up. Ultimately, you have to draw a line in the sand and do a threshold somewhere. And so this was the threshold that they used was 30, but 29 is just as good. 31 is a little bit better. And start where you are today. And don't put pressure on yourself. Progress over perfection. That's what I always say. But what you do is you make this a centerpiece of your approach. So you step into the supermarket, or you're in the kitchen, or you are sitting down at the dinner table and you hear my voice from this podcast. You hear Dr. B say, diversity of plants, right? And it's like the field of dreams. This voice reaches out and you're like, oh, that's a good idea.
If you eat it, your microbiome will rejoice. You can just kind of hear it echoing.
Look, our food system is not going to do it for you. 75% of the calories from plants in your supermarket come from 3 plants: wheat, corn, and soy. That's not to vilify those things, by the way. That's a different story. But junk food that uses wheat, corn, and soy, that's what most of our supermarket is. And so when it comes to eating plants, it has to come intrinsically from you. You have to make the decision that this is something that you want to do, because our modern culture and food systems are not going to do it for you. Example, I'm going to make tomato sauce with my kids, right? We're going to eat spaghetti. It could be spaghetti and sauce. That's not really feeding the microbiome. But you could take that sauce and invite your children into the kitchen with you. Hey, come on in here. Let's do this together. And like, what would you throw into that sauce? I'll start. You could throw some onions, some garlic, some mushrooms.
Zucchini. You love zucchini.
Zucchini. Ruby, what are we throwing in there?
Peas, probably. Spinach or kale. Maybe some flax on top.
You're a wild woman. So, but the point is, what started off as sauce, your kids helped. It's simmering. It's fragrant. It's way tastier. And it is basically a vehicle to deliver a diversity of plants to your gut microbiome. This is a huge win for your gut microbes. Wasn't that hard? You don't have to be a French trained chef. All you got to do is think about it, and then you do it.
Well, I really love that quote early in the book. You're talking about just in general how we've taken what should be so simple and we've made it so complicated in terms of what we should eat, that everyone thinks they have to be following this really detailed avoidance plan. And you're right. Like, if we get back to this more basic approach and think about, we've talked about this in many episodes, how much easier it is to add something in as opposed to thinking about what you're giving up and taking away. I know we spent a long time on your story in the beginning, but I think that's so crucial because that's probably where most people like me are coming from. Like, this idea of completely overhauling can seem really overwhelming. And so when you started, you were just doing kind of choices that stacked on top of each other and seeing how you felt and then kind of going from there.
I mean, I didn't even realize that I was applying these principles. This research did not exist when I started this journey back in 2013. It turns out that what I was actually doing, for example, going home and pulling out the blender and throwing, 6 to 10 different plants in there. That's exactly what I'm talking about right now. It doesn't have to be that hard. It just has to be something that you think about. And it's like you said, we are actually simplifying this. There's one rule. Stop counting calories. Stop counting macros. Don't even worry about grams of fiber. Just eat plants and eat them in variety and enjoy them. They're delicious.
So, scenario for you, because I am a child of the 90s, and I think a lot of our listeners are as well. So, prime childhood in the 90s, right? So, you start your day with Eggo waffles topped with artificial maple syrup. Lunchtime, it's a good day because your mom packed a Lunchable with a fruit by the foot and a Capri Sun. And maybe there's some carrot sticks in there, but who has time for those?
For you to throw away.
Yeah, because, your friend has these new 3D Doritos, right? So that's really good. And then after a school snack, you have pizza rolls and Cheese Whiz and crackers and probably some root beer if your mom's not home. And then dinner, mom's tired, right? So you have a choice: chicken nuggets, some tater tots, maybe that purple Heinz ketchup, which I can't even believe existed. Or, maybe she's like, you did good. Let's go, no shade on Pizza Hut, but let's get that book it, certificate and get your free personal pan pizza at Pizza Hut. So if this is kind of your childhood and this is where you're coming from, is it too late?
Absolutely not. First of all, I'm a child of the 80s. And so
80s. I know I didn't want to say it. Here I am.
You have our 80s version of what you just described. It was like Kool-Aid and, SpaghettiOs.
I am Gen Xer at heart. I am grunge all the way. but apparently I'm a geriatric millennial.
So yeah, that's what I was about to say is like, you guys are in Seattle and I can't help but mention that you're like, I'm a child of the 90s. And I was like, okay, so when you were a baby, I was cruising to Burger King, listening to Pearl Jam. So
I love Pearl Jam. I am Gen Xer at heart for sure.
here's the beautiful and exciting thing. Your microbes, there's actually research that indicates when you change your diet within literally 24 hours, your gut microbiome is already starting to change with you. What that means is that like one meal is not necessarily the end of the world. And also, one meal could be the start of something really great where you could start building momentum. Because then when you repeat that a couple times, which is kind of what happened to me, all of a sudden you're building momentum towards a healthier gut microbiome and it's starting to adapt with you and change into something different. You are adaptable. You are capable of more than you realize. And you mentioned that you're a runner. Did you wake up one day and run a marathon?
No, it was part of my infertility journey. I'd never run until I had infertility. And then after several unsuccessful IVF cycles, I wanted to do something where I kind of could follow a plan and schedule and like have my body do what I wanted it to do. Because that's what's so hard about infertility is that you could do everything right and you still may not get the outcome you wanted. And so I just decided to run a half marathon, and I'd never run more than, 3-4 miles before. And I found a guide. And I think it's applicable to this because what I followed was kind of one of those guide to injury free running when you're doing run walk breaks, where you're kind of like, you run never more than 5 minutes in the beginning. Like you run for 5, you walk for 1. And that never seems as intimidating. Like I can run for 5 minutes. Anybody can run for 5 minutes. And having that break and stretches your muscles, it keeps you from overdoing it. And then you just kind of gradually up your mileage. And now it's like 14 years later and I've done Ragnars and I still do a lot of halves and fulls. And it's like my happy stress relief place. And if you'd asked me when I was in my 20s, I would be like, oh, of course I don't run. Who does that? So, those small changes, but doing it in a way that it doesn't seem overwhelming. I mean, that's how you're going to find out if it's something that works in your life.
And the beautiful thing is that, so first of all, they've done research on people who are runners, and they showed that running actually changes your gut microbiome. This is showing you how interactive our gut microbiome is with our bodily needs as humans. One of the microbes that becomes more prominent when you become a runner, this is in your gut microbiome. One of the microbes that becomes more prominent is one that helps you to break down lactic acid. Lactic acid is what causes muscle fatigue. And so when we're a runner, we want endurance. And we need to break down that lactic acid and become more adapted to it. And our microbiome actually helps us to accomplish that.
That's so cool.
See, Anne?
I know.
We're bringing you around. So you're going to reach chapter 2 tonight.
Yeah.
So the other thing that happens is your gut microbiome, you don't even have to change your diet. Your gut microbiome starts to produce more short chain fatty acids. So when I was exercising, swimming, and running, the reason why I wasn't getting results is because you still have to feed the microbes. You can't make short chain fatty acids out of nothing. But if you combine the two, if you exercise and also change your diet and add more fiber, that's how you create a multiplier effect to really crank up the short chain fatty acids. And what you're describing, Anne, like you eloquently described the process of training, or we could also use the word practice. And this applies to so much of what we do as humans on a daily basis that we don't even think about because it's just established and accepted. This is the way the world turns, right? Not just physical stuff. It's your mind too. If you practice, I become a better writer when I'm writing more often. So we are adaptable, incredible creatures. And the most adaptable part of us is our microbiome. It can change within 24 hours. These microbes are spitting out new generations in 20 minutes. We've been talking for over an hour. And during this time, what was the baby microbe is now a great grandparent. Okay. So that's how quickly this is evolving and changing. And that to me is a very exciting thing. Because Ruby, what you were describing, that was me. I grew up on junk food in the 80s. I ate hot dogs after school in the 90s. My favorite food was fast food. And when I went into my medical training, starting in medical school, I was so busy and so tired. I needed something that was cheap and convenient and fast, and it tasted good. And this food fit so perfectly into that mold. And I didn't realize that I was paying the price with my health. But there I was after 30 years of flogging my body with these foods. And I made the change. And it was a small change at first, but there was this inflection point where I turned that corner. It was that smoothie. And I'm turning that corner. And over the course of time, these small choices start adding up. And here I am, and I'm in my 40s. I'm in the best shape of my life. I work out twice a week. I should work out more, but at least in terms of lifting weights, I lift weights twice a week. I've never lifted more weight in my life. I do some running in addition to that. I eat a healthful diet. My sleep is great. I mean, it's just like, it's amazing where you can take yourself with these types of changes that are simple, they're sensible, they're small, and you get to do them on your own terms. And I'm also not saying 0% processed foods. I'm not 0% processed foods. I'm just significantly reduced relative to where I was.
Well, I think I know the answer to this because I think you just answered it, but how do you know if your gut is functioning well?
As a gastroenterologist, the first place that I would go is probably bloating. There's many ways in which our gut is connected to our body. It's not just a digestive thing, but generally speaking, because we lean on our gut so much in terms of digesting our food, particularly foods like fiber, because we lean on it so much, when your gut is not happy, typically you're going to manifest digestive symptoms, and sort of the starting point usually is bloating of some variety. Patients, people that I would take care of, you would see them in the clinic and they're there for their digestive problem, but then you look at their medical problem, their list, and it's like, okay, they have high blood pressure, they have high cholesterol, they have diabetes, they have allergic issues, they have autoimmune issues, they have migraine headaches. It could be infertility, but it could also be things like polycystic ovary syndrome or endometriosis. There's a lot of different ways that this could affect your body, and it's all systems.
And that is a perfect transition because I think we're going to leave it on a cliffhanger until our short snack episode this Saturday, where we're going to talk about the gut and hormones more specifically. But Anne, is there anything else as we wrap up this fantastic episode?
No, this was great. I so appreciate your time. I mean, what a story. And yeah, you've definitely inspired me. I know Ruby has been on this lecture for me for a while.
I'm not lecturing.
You're not. But I think you make it all seem very approachable. And for those that can't see, because it's a podcast, you look great. I'm in my mid-40s and I would have guessed you're like 30s. So it's good to know that it's not too late to keep making adjustments. And I think, thank you for everything you came to talk with us about today.
Thanks, guys. I just want to run through my story one more time, taking it from the top.
You can find out more about Dr. B and his approach, like I said at the beginning, on his website, theplantfedgut.com, and on social, the Gut Health MD, which is doing fabulous compared to where it started, I think. And then, of course, you can find us on all the social things. Rate, review, and subscribe. As always, we need some more of those 5-star reviews, and we will see you on Saturday.
Feed your microbiome. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Whole Pineapple Podcast. We hope it was helpful.
If you know someone who could benefit from hearing the podcast, we hope you'll share it with them.
And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review The Whole Pineapple on your favorite podcast app. Every rating and review makes us easier to find.
This podcast is sponsored by Seattle Reproductive Medicine and is produced by Audiotocracy Podcast Production. We'll see you next time. Have a delicious week.